All right, we're continuing our discussion of the theology of Paul concerning spiritual gifts in First Corinthians and in chapter 13 for this session. Continuing to read the text, Paul said, "If I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have all faith," and he means by that miraculous faith, faith to remove mountains, "but I have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all that I have, if I deliver up my body to be burned, and have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never fails, the King James says, the ESV, love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away." Once again, not knowledge, general knowledge, but supernatural knowledge, knowledge that God gives. He said that will come to an end. "For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spake as a child, and I thought as like a child, and I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish things, childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, and then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, but the greatest of these is love." Now remember when we concluded our reading of chapter 12, that Paul said that he was going to show them a more excellent way, a better way of life, rather than pushing and shoving and trying to get ahead of someone else, and my gift is better than your gift. And the more excellent way that he was trying to show to them and to us is the way of love. Love is greater than the spiritual gifts, the miraculous spiritual gifts. And that we should desire that one above tongue speaking, above prophesying, above interpretations, above administrations. I don't know why, but it seems to be a difficult lesson for us to learn. We want to glory in the things that are outward and the things that exalt ourselves. But agape love looks in the best interest of the other. And especially in the church, it looks at the best interest of the whole body and not just ourselves. So Paul went to a great deal of lengths here to describe this agape love. I think it's unfortunate that so often we've used this text to talk about marriage almost entirely. And we've used another form of the word love here. We just have one word in English, and the Greeks had several. And we use it to mean a romantic attraction, a love for one another that pulls us together as male and female, as man and wife. Now, while these principles apply there, That's really not what Paul had in mind. And all we have to do is to ask the question, does romantic love ever fail us? Does romantic love bear all things, believes all things, endures all things, hopes all things? All we have to do is to read those words to see that he was talking about something higher than that, greater than that, and that is agape love. And so Paul is urging them to be mindful of the benefit for the whole body and not just what they are doing and what the service that they're rendering to the church with their gift. And Paul will even say later in chapter 14, I speak in tongues more than all of you. And yet he said, if I have not love, that profits me nothing. These spiritual gifts, he said, will pass away. But love doesn't pass away. He said, now abides faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. And so Paul shows the extraordinary importance of agape love, the higher love, the godly love, and that we should learn how to love by knowing God. We love him because he first loved us, the Apostle John wrote. Someone said about verse 13 that here's a tripod that Paul uses to survey the landscape of Christianity. And that tripod, having three legs, are faith, hope, and love. These three are extraordinarily important. He said, now, after the spiritual gifts have passed away, these three abide. And the greatest of these is love. I want to point out something in addition here that Paul is often found doing, and that is that he will speak about the present tense. He said, and now abides these. He speaks both in the present tense and he yet is also looking toward the future. He said, now we know in part, and then shall we know fully, even as we have been known. And now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face, we shall know even as we're known. And so Paul had that ability. He could speak of it, that future glory, that future state, as if we're now in it. We now embrace it. We now possess it. And perhaps that's what he's doing in regard to these gifts. And that they would pass away at some point during the time period of the church and the operation of the church, that there will be a time in which we will not have these anymore. Now think about it for a moment. If Paul is speaking only of the future tense, that at some point at the second coming of Christ, for example, at the resurrection of the dead, that these spiritual gifts are going to cease, he need not have said that. Because, well, everything earthly will cease. Peter would say that the earth will pass away with a great noise. And so, of what value would there be in saying that these things are going to pass away, and he's talking about it at the end of time? Is that Paul's theology here? His eschatology? Is that what he's pointing to? It wouldn't make a lot of sense if it did, because everything passes away then. Everything earthly, The church as an assembly on earth will pass away. It'll not be anymore. There'll be a great assembly in heaven, but not on earth. And so it seems to me that Paul has to be talking about a time period within history, within the period of the church existence in which these spiritual gifts will come to an end. But of course, the question is, when? And he says that that would happen when that which is perfect has come. Then that which is in part shall be done away. Someone described the time period of the church with all of these miraculous spiritual gifts and even having the apostles there with them. They described it as scaffolding on a building as it is going up, as it is being constructed. But when you reach the top, when you get the roof on, when you finish the construction, you take away the scaffolding. Seems to me to be a good illustration. Do we need a continuation of the temporary period when the church was being built? Do we need to go back to the time period when they did not have the written covenant, the scriptures of the New Testament? It seems to me that that would be a weaker period of time. You remember Paul said also, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought as a child, I understood as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And so it was with the church. That at one point it was like a child, it was like an infant, and yet it became a man. And in doing so, you put away the temporary things, the toys, the speech, the understanding that you had as a child. And now you understand more fully, more completely. It seems to me that Paul is talking about the coming of the complete revelation of God. And when that is completed, we have before us, before our tripod, our scope in which we survey biblical history, all the way back to in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth to the very end. When we turn the telescope, we turn it now toward the future and we see the fullness of it, and the covenant is complete. It's not partial. We're not speaking in tongues. We're not prophesying. It's been fulfilled. And we have that covenant now before us. And it seems to me, I realize that there are those who want to continue these. In fact, there's a body of people that's named after the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. And their effort, they think that it is very essential that we go back to Pentecost and have the same things that they had then. Same powers, same gifts. But it seems to me that that would be erecting the scaffolding again. And it would be going back to our childhood days. And Paul said that when we become an adult, we put away the childish things. And it may also explain why those of us who, it seems to me, that would accept reality, that we don't see people raising the dead. I know there are people who claim that. And we don't have people being miraculously healed of blindness, for example, or deafness, or muteness. I realize that there are those who say that those things continue. But it seems to me that there's very little evidence for it. And it seems to me that that which is presented to us as being evidence is not very convincing. It's not been convincing to me, and I've observed it now for those promised years of 70 and a few years beyond. And that's not to be unkind. It is simply to seek an understanding of what Paul is saying here. What is his theology about spiritual gifts? What did he teach about it? He said that love never fails. But whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Once again, when? If it's at the second coming, this would be meaningless. If it's at the end, when all things are brought to an end and the heavens and earth shall pass away, then these words would be meaningless. I know, I understand that Paul often has two things in mind. He has one time period in which it is partially completed in a manner, and then the real fullness is yet to come, of course. We see through a glass darkly, but then face to face we shall know as we are known. This is an important section. And he's saying the greatest of these gifts is love. Why? Because love never fails. How about the spiritual gifts? They will come to an end. And now abides faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. This is such an important section. And once again, to use this almost entirely in a wedding ceremony is to miss the point. Can you make application of it? Yes, of course. And these words are beautiful to repeat in such settings as that. But I believe we need to go back to the context and to ask afresh, what does this chapter mean in the context of chapter 12, 13, and 14? All three chapters are speaking about the same thing. The context is miraculous spiritual gifts, and when they would come to an end, and when love would never fail. Agape love, the love that brothers should have one toward another in the church, in the family of God. That's what Paul is emphasizing in this text. And I appreciate you for studying, for listening to the reading of 1 Corinthians 13.